Today's scripture reading will be 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 13 through 17. I repeat, 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 13 through 17. Submit yourselves for the Lord's sake to every authority instituted among men, whether to the king as a supreme authority, or to governors who are sent by him to punish those who do wrong and to commend those who do right. For it is God's will that by doing good you should silence the ignorant talk of foolish men. Live as free men, but do not use your freedom as a cover-up for evil. Live as servants of God. Show proper respect to everyone. Love the brotherhood of believers. Fear God. Honor the king.
We're going to begin the sermon a little bit differently today, but I still plan to get you out on time. We're going to start by singing a little bit. And so I've told a few of you ahead of time what I want you to do, and I'm going to ask you to think about what is your favorite worship song. And so, Glenn, do you have a favorite worship song?
Yes.
What is it?
It is well with my soul.
It is well with my soul, okay? That means John Rice is going to have to find another one. Larry, do you have a favorite worship song?
To God be the glory.
To God be the glory. Okay, you guys come on down to the front and join me down here, if you will. Okay. Now then, let's see. Who else has a favorite song? Russ? Okay, Nick, you got a favorite song. What is it?
Shelter in the time of storm.
A Shelter in Time of Storm. Okay, is that the English version or the Spanish version?
English one.
English one. Okay, come on down and have a seat. We're going to, or you can stand up. That's fine. These guys are going to stand up with me. Russ, do you have a favorite song? Where are you? There you are. My eyes are dry. Come on down and join us here. And let's see. Let's talk about some others. Dave, do you have a favorite song?
The Old Rugged Cross.
The Old Rugged Cross. Okay. If you want to stand up, you can help us too. All right. And everybody else have a favorite song? Our God, He is alive. Okay. What I want you to do is I want every one of you to think of your favorite song. Your favorite worship song. Okay? Everybody. We're going to sing them. Okay? Now, I'm going to turn the microphone off because I don't want to drown anybody out, but we're going to sing them. And so, let's all start. This isn't working out very well, is it? Okay, you guys go have a seat. Thank you. Thank you. Let's try it this way. I love you, Lord, and I lift my voice to worship you. Oh, my soul, rejoice. Take joy, my King, in what you hear. May it be a sweet, sweet sound in your ear. Now, which of those two exercises was the more enjoyable? The first or the second? But you were singing your favorite songs. Each of us was singing our favorite song. But the second is more enjoyable than the first. Which do you think is more pleasing to God? The first or the second? The second. But you were singing your favorite song. The difference between the first and the second is a word. Submission. And that's the key word for the text that we're going to look at today. submission. How do we make music together? The answer is submission. We subordinate our feelings and our biases to the leadership of one person. And whether we're playing instruments in an orchestra or whether we're singing a cappella, one person leads, everyone else joins in. Sometimes they're singing soprano or alto or tenor or bass, but they all join in and sing in unity and in harmony because we all individually submit not only to the leader but also to the group. I like this quotation from William Young. Submission is not about authority and it's not obedience. It's all about relationships of love and respect. You know, if I'd really known what was coming on the political landscape, I might have chosen some other book to preach than 1 Peter. Because we live in a society where submission is not a very popular concept. Nobody likes to be told what to do. Have you ever noticed that? And American culture is based on the idea that we all have freedom from a government that restricts us and tells us what to do and when to do it. And it's not just an American proclivity, it's just a part of human nature. James Dobson's written a lot of books about families and about children. And he talks about the fact that in a family, you have two kinds of children. You have compliant children and you have defiant children. And any of you have had more than one child know what I'm talking about. Compliant and defiant. He says there are about twice as many defiant children as there are compliant ones. From my courtroom experience, I suspect that may be right. In fact, I suspect it may kind of understate the number of defiant children. But it's not just in our homes, not just children. Our whole society, it seems like, is constantly up in arms. Everybody wanting their voice to be the voice that leads everyone. It's interesting to me. For 8 years, we had one party that kind of exercised leadership and another party that was just constantly complaining, gripe about everything. And then that did a turnabout, and now they've changed roles, and what have you got? You've got another party that's in leadership and another party, the first one that was in leadership for 8 years, going gripe, right? Because everybody wants my voice to be the deciding factor. My voice. Having folks on one side who gloat because they've got the power, and another group who gripe because they don't. Just seems like it's the way of American life. It's just human nature, because we all want to do our own thing and have our own way. Isaiah 53 verse 6, this is from the Message translation. We're all like sheep who've wandered off and gotten lost. We've all done our own thing, gone our own way, and God has piled all our sins, everything we've done wrong, on Him. On Him. You know, I grew up going to Bible classes, and I remember all of those, long before we had, video and slides and PowerPoint and all that kind of stuff, we go to Bible class and the teacher would give us little postcards. And those postcards would have a drawing on them. And I remember the pictures of Jesus and the sheep. Remember those pictures? He's got the sheep over his shoulder. He's holding the sheep in his arm. And we all thought, oh, isn't that sweet? You think that if you don't know sheep. Sheep are stubborn. They make mules look compliant. Sheep are stupid. They will muddy their own water that they're drinking from by stomping around in it and relieving themselves in it. The reason that shepherds have to keep sheep on the move is because if they don't, they won't have pasture very long, because sheep just don't care about anything except the moment. Let me tell you, folks, when the Bible compares us to sheep, it is no compliment. Without submission, there's no progress. Somebody's got to lead, somebody's got to follow. The problem is when our guy isn't leading. Now, recall last week we ended with verse 12, one that Bob mentioned in class this morning, where Peter says that we're supposed to, as Christians, live such good lives among the pagans that though they accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day He visits us. Now, in class this morning, we saw we're not supposed to be doing our good deeds so that everybody pats us on the back to see how good we are. But Peter says we're supposed to let our good deeds be seen so that God is glorified, not that we're glorified. It all is a matter of submission. And what we're going to see in the next few lessons is Peter starts off today with talking about submission to government. And then in the next lesson, he's going to talk about submission within the work relationship. And then after that, he's going to talk about submission in the home. And the husbands are sitting out there saying, okay, I can hardly wait. 2 weeks from now, I know what we're going to talk about. I want to make sure my wife is here, right? The principle of submission. Notice that he starts off with that word, submit yourselves. This is a middle voice in Greek, which means it's something you do to yourself. It's not something that's forced on you. It's something you do voluntarily. Submit yourselves for the Lord's sake to every human authority, literally every human creation or every human institution, whether to the emperor as the supreme authority or to governors who are sent by him to punish those who do wrong and to commend those who do right. He's talking about submission within society. Now, the Greek word is what, Bob? Hupotasso. Hupotasso. Comes from two Greek words. Hupo means under. Tasso means arrange. And so it is the idea of arranging under, or arranging oneself under something that is more important. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. It originated as a word to describe military formations, and not just ranks. I mean, we could think about, arranging the order of a hierarchy, the commander in chief, the joint chiefs, the generals or admirals, and then, coming on down the line. But it also has to do, and this is the way the Romans used it, to talk about formations within the army. And so everybody would form themselves under the leadership of one person. But when they did so, not only were they under the leadership and direction of that one person, but they were also responsible for each other. You're looking at what's called the turtle formation. And this is one of the formations the Roman legions would engage in when they would go up against an enemy force. They call it the turtle formation. You can see why, because it looks like they're a bunch of turtles that got their heads down there where nobody can see them. But if you notice what's going on here, these guys in front, they have their shields in front so that they're protecting the whole group from the front. But then if you notice, the guys behind all have their shield so that it protects the person in front. If one person in that formation doesn't do his job, and I don't say his or her because the Roman army was all male. If one person in that formation doesn't do his job, the whole group is at risk. Submission. It means finding your place in that organization. It is the ability to lay down the terrible burden of always needing to get our own way. Is that something that our society could learn from? And so Peter says, believers are never to be known as subversive troublemakers, but as model citizens. Now that's interesting, especially in the day when Peter's writing, because the day he's writing is not at all like our 21st century United States. It was the Roman Empire, which was a tyranny. Now, it was a great empire, but it was very autocratic. As a matter of fact, Jesus' ministry began during the reign of Tiberius. Now, if you've been in my class on Revelation, you know how the emperors followed each other, and each one became more and more decadent. After Julius died and Augustus became the first emperor, Augustus had the Senate declare Julius a god, so that, guess what? Augustus suddenly becomes the son of God. Cool. Augustus, then when he died, was succeeded by Tiberius. Tiberius was just a corrupt, decadent person. He moved off the coast. He moved to the island of Capri, where he built this palace overlooking a cliff. And from the time he moved to Capri, he never again went back to Rome. He ruled by remote control. He let his henchmen in Rome run amok, do as they pleased, as long as they provided him with what he wanted to satisfy his decadent lifestyle. One of his favorite things was to kidnap young boys in Italy, have them brought to the island of Capri, where they satisfied his deviant sexual behaviors. And when he was done with them, he'd have them thrown off of the cliff to dash their bodies on the rocks below. The Romans didn't care much for Tiberius. As a matter of fact, they detested him. They hated him. But every year, they had to say, Caesar is Lord, and offer a pinch of incense at the statue of Tiberius. Even though they detested him, they were forced to deify him. Tiberius was known to say this, "Let them hate me, provided they respect me." He was succeeded by a fellow named Caligula. That wasn't his real name, that was his nickname. Caligay is the word for boots, and so when he was a little boy growing up in the army, he used to run around in his own little, uniform, including the little soldier boots, and so they called him Boots, Caligula. Caligula was so bad that he didn't live very long, because once he became king, they pretty quickly assassinated him. Caligula said this, "I don't care if they respect me, so long as they fear me." Matter of fact, Caligula decreed that his statue would be set up in the temple in Jerusalem, and the Jews would be forced to pay homage to him in the Jewish temple. Fortunately, he died before that order was carried out. But the Roman society was not a society that catered to much in the way of individual voices. It was an autocracy. Half the people who lived in the Roman Empire were slaves. They had no right at all. There was no vote. There was no right to protest. There was only the right to do what the upper class wanted you to do. Well, you can understand why the Jews didn't care much for the Romans. And in Jesus' day, there were some Jews who had done well under Roman rule, who thought that it was a good idea to submit to Rome. They were called the Herodians. And then there were others who were so dead set against the Romans that they wanted to kill them all. They were called the Pharisees and the Zealots. And, those two people didn't get along very well. But, as is often the case, if you give two enemies a common enemy, they might actually ally with one another, at least to deal with that enemy. That's what happened in the book of Matthew when they came to Jesus in Matthew 22 and asked the question, "Shall we pay taxes to Caesar or not?" The Herodians are thinking, if he says, no, don't pay taxes to Caesar, that's going to get him in trouble with the Romans. The Pharisees are saying, aha, if he says don't pay taxes to Caesar, that's going to lead to insurrection. And if he says pay taxes to Caesar, that's going to feed right into the Herodian idea that we're supposed to support Rome. They wanted this Messiah to come in and take a physical military force and defeat the Romans and throw them out just like Judas Maccabeus had done to the Greeks a couple of centuries earlier. But notice, Jesus never picketed, he never marched on Rome, he never marched on Jerusalem, he never started an insurrection, he never tried to win a culture war. Matter of fact, on that occasion he said, well, show me the coin you used to pay the taxes. They give him a coin, he looks at it and says, whose picture is this? Oh, it's Caesar's. Okay, well, give him what belongs to him, what bears his image. And by the way, give God what bears his image. And if you've read the Bible, what bears the image of God? We do. Give to Caesar what bears his image. Give to God what bears his image. So Peter says, following Jesus' lead, submit yourselves for the Lord's sake to every authority instituted among men, whether to the king as the supreme authority or to governors who are sent by him to punish those who do wrong and to commend those who do right. Now, the particulars of submission, as he describes them here, are to two groups of people. There's the emperor, verse 13, and there's governors. The emperor is the supreme authority. Paul says every authority is instituted by God. God chooses who's going to be on the throne, who's not going to be on the throne. He's the one who calls the shots, but then the governors enforce the laws that are decreed by the emperor. So you've got this executive branch going here. The emperor who made the laws, the governors who enforce the laws. Now, when Peter wrote this, Tiberius was dead and gone. Caligula was dead and gone. The fellow who was on the throne was a fellow named Nero. Now, at this point, this is before the fire of Rome that occurred in 64 AD. But when that did happen, Nero turned all of Rome against the Christians. Most people think that Nero was really behind the burning of Rome in 64 AD. It was kind of his urban renewal project. He burned the part of the city that he wanted to build his Colosseum on, that ultimately was not built by him, but was built by the Vespasian and Titus. So anyway, Rome was up in arms because so many people had been burned out of their homes. They wanted somebody to blame. Have you ever noticed that? When something bad happens, everybody wants to blame somebody. And so Nero said, it's the Christians, they did it. Tacitus records this. Mockery of every sort accompanied their deaths. See, Nero made the Christians into scapegoats. Covered with skins of beasts